Hey friends, I know we got cut off, so this will be hopefully the
Part
part
two.
two, and hopefully that's all we need. So we're going to start back in Matthew 26, verse 36, going on when we were talking about Gethsemane. Um, I think that's about where we got cut off before. So I'm going to start reading in verse 36. And thank you for sticking with us. I'm sorry we're having these technical difficulties, but this is a learning curve for us all. This new
We're
normal.
saying devil, not today.
That's right. So starting in verse 36 of Matthew chapter 26, it says, Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, Sit here while I go over there and pray. He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will. And then he returned to the disciples and found them sleeping. Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away a second time and prayed, My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done. When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. And so he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. I'm going to read this scripture from Luke 22, and it says, An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground.
Yeah, Jesus wanted to have this time in prayer, and in it, he was feeling a bit overwhelmed, and he was asking this cup to be taken away from him. And why was that? Well, Jesus was a man as well as God, and so he was feeling this frailty of humanity. But I also believe he was very sorrowful for leaving. You know, God gives us free will. And here he's amongst his followers on the earth, and he's able to be with them in relationship. And now he's going back to the Father. And I think he's really concerned about those guys. And he says, not as I will, not as I would will, but your will be done. Because our will is always self-preservation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is often weak. And so in our hopelessness, we need to trust God, because his ways are the best. They're always the best, even though they may seem wrong and foolish to us. Jesus knew he had to drink from the cup of acceptance. He had to drink to surrender to God's will. He had to die to the old self so that he could achieve this promise of new creation, of resurrection. And as Rachel read for us in Luke, angels came. God sends help. He's with us always. He ministers to us in our darkest times, when our soul is overwhelmed, when we're anguished, stressed, or worried, even to the point of death.
So we're going to move on in Matthew 26 still, moving on to verse 45. I told you there was a lot in this one today. It says, Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer. And while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd, armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him. Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Jesus replied, Do what you came for, friend. Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. And with that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Put your sword back in its place, Jesus said to him. For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say, this must happen in this way? In that hour, Jesus said to the crowd, am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place, that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
See, Jesus allowed these things to happen so that God's glory would be revealed. He humbled himself. He had compassion on the enemies. The soldier of the high priest whose ear was cut off, Jesus healed. We read that in another scripture. And I want you to know that Jesus, in this, he wasn't surrendering to man. He was surrendering to God, to God's will that needed to be done, so that prophecy would be fulfilled. So we would see this, and our faith would be strengthened, and that all people could see it for all time who he was. But in here we saw that prophecy was fulfilled in a betrayer betraying him with a kiss, with that Jesus was like a lamb being led to the slaughter, and that the shepherd was struck, and that the sheep were all scattered.
So let's read our last passage of scripture from Matthew chapter 26, beginning in verse 69. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway, where another servant girl saw him, and said to the people out there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. And after a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. And immediately the rooster crowed. And then Peter remembered the words Jesus had spoken when he said, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly.
Yeah, I know Peter failed here, but we all fail and deny God through our actions, through our words, through our thoughts. But Jesus strengthens us even in our weakness. There was a scripture from Luke back at the Last Supper. I didn't want to read that because I loved it right here, and I want to read it to you now. It said, Simon, Simon, which was another name for Peter, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Jesus knows that we're all going to be tempted by Satan. He was. But Jesus prays for us. He prays that our faith and our trust in him is strong. He prays that we will turn from loving ourselves to loving God. And then he prays that we will love and support each other.
Amen. Well, we hope that this has been encouraging for you, uplifting for you. We hope maybe even learn something walking through these passages. There are a lot of great passages here, even beyond the ones we shared today, that can help you to walk through this week. And we would encourage you to discover those on your own. As I said before, we will put these passages in the comments of this video at some point today so that you can walk through those. We've really enjoyed being here with you. We hope you'll join us for our last day during our Holy Week. Oh, maybe we'll do Saturday too.
Yeah, we're doing Saturday.
All right, so we'll join you tomorrow for Good Friday in any case as we continue the walk to the cross. And we just hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. We love you all. May God's every blessing